Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Tuesday Tips, our weekly series here on the Grow Schools channel about all challenges facing school leaders. As usual, you've got Michael Barber here to get you through the next usual 10 to 15 minutes. And I'm really pleased to welcome in our guest today. That would be Derek Hollister from Bold World. Derek, how you doing?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
I appreciate you being here. Well, we invited Derek to come in and chat today on the importance of branding for your school. Of course, if you had the chance to sit in on our Grow Enrollment Summit last Friday, Derek was our speaker on all things branding. And we know we had a couple additional questions come out of the conversation. We wanted to reinforce a couple of the topics that we touched on from last week. So we asked Derek to come back and spend a few minutes with us on the topic of branding. So Derek, I've got a couple questions for you. Would love to know how you feel about the importance of branding for schools. Why is it so important? And how does it influence enrollment or community perception for those schools?
Yeah, a great question. So, first of all, I feel really strongly about this. I feel like branding is such a big component in how you are perceived in the world, how you are kind of experienced, and it does absolutely shape not only enrollment, but perceptions there. So, a few reasons. First and foremost, it's the core of who you are, right? It is, like it or not, the foundation of you from a verbal and a visual standpoint. It's the face of your experience and your school, how you look and feel, how you sound, how you establish trust and credibility, and how you communicate. So it definitely shapes how you're perceived to both prospective families and students and current families and students. And it plays such a big and central role in credibility and trust. It influences whether or not you're compelling enough to consider in the initial stages of a user journey. It influences and impacts your credentials and your experience, and it helps to establish buy-in right initially. And finally, kind of shapes the perception of things like if you're approachable and warm, if you're trustworthy from a family's perspective of their students' experience and how you're going to shape and influence their education and impact things, and your reputation. And it helps you to, as a user, get your foot in the door for the brand from that side of things, to kind of get started and get a legwork up in there. So, deep breaths. This is an important area. And there's so many ways that you can kind of go about it and evolve and refresh over a total sort of burn it all down and start over. There's always ways you can improve. And I like to kind of say that there's never really a finish line or a stopping place. Like you are constantly evolving, you are constantly changing and shaping, even though you definitely want to hit on, a consistency that you can build upon from a foundational standpoint as you move forward.
Yeah, such good insights there. Part of that brand, of course, is something you've touched on, and that's the feeling that someone gets when they encounter your school, right? And part of those elements for brand is identity or visual identity from things like logos and colors and taglines. Can you talk to why things like, all of those visual identity items, whether it's a logo, whether it's a color, whether it's a tagline, and how they help reinforce a school's mission and vision? And would really love some quick tips on, if you're a school starting, how do you go about defining those elements for your school?
Yeah, definitely. So I think the big thing to look at here is kind of goals and vision, right? And how you want to be perceived in the world. So the role of logos, for better or worse, it is a global and common element of your identity that serves to act as a visual cue. It gives you a reminder. People can recognize it, whether it's like iconic and big from a massive brand to something small that they just know and they see, and then they associate that with you. But colors and communications and taglines, they all play such a key role in kind of reinforcing that vision and mission in different ways. So colors can really shape a mood or a feel or a vibe that a brand might give off, a perception that they give off. And so you should definitely kind of have an understanding of the impact that colors can have on psychology. Are you warm? Are you a little on the cooler side? How does that play into maybe how does this feel modern or approachable? Or is this a little off-putting because these are very stark colors and that creates a feeling like, hey, this might be a little cold or a little sterile in terms of how I can experience this brand. From a tagline, it is essentially, I like to say, kind of your ethos or your essence. So it is your mission and vision, but told in as few of words as humanly possible, and something that should be a rallying point, that should get people inspired and excited, so that they can rally behind what your vision is, told through essentially, again, as few of words as possible. Ways to kind of start to define those. I mean, many of you will have your logos, will have your color palette selected and taglines already built. But if you're starting that process, or if you're starting over, I like to start from kind of the ground up. I love to get inspiration. My team loves the process of going out into the wild and finding things that are motivating and inspiring, whether that's in this world or in a different industry. And then looking at, marks, colors, font styles, imagery, things like that, and pairing that with the verbal aspects of a brand, key messages, mission statements, vision statements, things like that. So taking the inspiration, really identify and understand what goals you might have for how this comes to life and what you want it to accomplish, and then create and explore a lot. Don't just be satisfied with the first or second choices. Really push and drive something that you can be proud of, that is unique, and that you can, again, kind of rally behind visually and verbally. And finally, what I would kind of leave you with is, if you're just simply looking to evolve or extend, absolutely think about things like adding other colors to your palette. Softer colors or some more modern tones and hues can absolutely start to kind of shape and balance how your brand looks and feels and comes across in the wild. And you want some flexibility with that, so that you can break things up and help people kind of just take a breath here and there with different backgrounds.
Yeah, such good tips there for bringing that visual identity to life through either logos, a color, or a tagline. The other part that you touched on in your first answer that's part of brand identity is, of course, that tone and voice that schools can develop to make sure that they feel like the brand that they're trying to bring to life. Can you talk to a little bit about how can schools develop that consistent voice and tone that resonates across both for current and prospective families across their digital channels?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll probably be a little bit more long-winded here, but what I'd say is that voice and tone are just crucial building blocks to the verbal aspects of your brand, right? How you talk, how you sound, how you show up and come across. They help you create a centralized and consistent framework for messaging across every channel. And they feed into all those aspects of your content. So the voice is what you say, and you can think of it as your personality. It is consistent and unchanging, much like many of our personalities are. And it is us focused, or you focused, from a school's perspective. Your tone is how you say it, and it's kind of your attitude, for lack of better terms. It's flexible. It can change to meet the situation or circumstance, but it should be outward and them focused, kind of all about your audiences. You definitely want to have a game plan when it comes to this. You should start by defining your voice and tone, considering key touch points or those impact moments for your current and prospective families, anywhere from that consideration stage through the ongoing building of the relationships and maintaining those. Document those key moments or screens or types of content that you might want to push to the families on those channels. Empathize with where they might be in their emotional states, like when they are in those moments and when they're getting this information from you. Anything from excited and hopeful to confused and annoyed, hopefully a little less than the excited and hopeful stage. And then choose the appropriate tones to resonate with people in those moments. Furthermore, as you're looking to expand this and take it into messaging, remember that you're speaking to real people and connect with them on their levels, right? Don't shy away from finding out what they're wondering about or struggling with, so you can provide some humanity across your channels. Be clear, avoid jargon, make sure you're delivering value, and tailor your messages for those right moments of impact.
Yeah, such good advice on how you can keep that voice and tone consistent across all those digital channels or social media profiles and whatnot. I want to ask a little bit about, obviously, your brand can't just extend to logos and taglines and tone and voice on digital channels or your social media profiles. It's also got to extend into both physical spaces as well. And I'd love your perspective on how schools can balance bringing that feeling of that brand that they're developing and bring it into their physical spaces like campuses, and then again extending it even further into their digital platforms. What advice do you have there?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we know branding is bigger than what you said, logos, colors, and taglines. It's perceptions, it's all kinds of things. But I love to think of it as like 100 million little moments where you touch the lives of whoever you're kind of trying to attract and bring in. First and foremost, I think you want to establish a really strong level of brand consistency across all these different outputs and channels. You definitely want people to be able to quickly recognize you and identify you, especially as they're learning about you and learning more. And there are stats that show brand consistency can actually fuel your growth as a brand. Consider how people engage or interact with your brand through the experiences and touch points. Physical signage is totally different from a video and totally different from a social carousel type of post. So, kind of know what you want to accomplish and then tailor the strategies to meet those unique specifics of the experiences. Other things you can do are you can lean into your strengths and differentiators to reinforce your mission and vision and kind of constantly be reminding current and prospective families why they should believe in you and why they should choose you over everyone else. Lastly, understand file types and logo
Mhm.
variations and color modes and readability. Like they have such a big impact on your branding efforts. Make sure you're using crisp, high res logos to avoid pixelation. Be aware of the difference between physical color modes, print color modes, and digital color modes. Otherwise, things can get real dicey and really interesting really quickly. And consider legibility when sizing and scaling important messages or content. Again, kind of making sure you're mapping that to the different mediums that you're choosing to show up on. Lastly, I would say too, if you're ever unsure, if you're ever kind of wondering like, why, how could this be perceived or how might this look, just test it out, right? Try to mock something up, try to print it out and blow it up, or print it out and walk away from it if it's signage or a billboard or something very big, and see if you can read it, see how it shows up, and make adjustments and course correct from there. But don't be afraid that because you hit print or because you hit post, you can't immediately take it down. You can absolutely test in off hours. You can check things out, you can screenshot, you can assess and break things down, and then, like I said, course correct or reinvent if you need to.
Yeah, such good advice there about like taking anything you're creating and putting it in the medium where it's at, right? To figure out if the context actually works. There's nothing worse than when a school produces a banner or signage outside that's going up on a fence or a building, and suddenly you realize that whatever font you've selected is too small or not legible from, you take a step back and realize nobody's going to be able to actually read or see what the point of that piece of collateral or signage you put up.
Oh yeah, I mean we've all been there. We're there too as an agency as we post social content to our channels. We're testing, quickly erasing, or
Yeah.
taking a story down to change something and put it back up. Absolutely, and for the schools that my kids are in, as we're getting communications, as we're getting emails, at home homework flyers, whatever it may be, the brand nerd in me and the designer in me kind of just cringes when something's been scanned and copied and scanned and copied and scanned and copied, and you can tell because it's so blurry you can barely read the document or whatever they're trying to say. So
Yeah, or like
just make sure.
shifted
Yeah,
at 30 degrees, so you have to like turn your head to read it.
that's
And
right, you got
yeah,
it, you got it. And what that stuff does is it just affects a little bit of credibility each time, and you want to make sure that you're not allowing for any kind of nicks in the armor there.
yeah, such good advice there. Well, we try and keep these conversations to about 10 to 15 minutes, and we're right up against that 14-minute mark. So I'm just going to say a big thank you for the conversation. Really great conversation, important conversation on the impact of brand and how it can drive preference for families and help school leaders make sure that they show up consistently with their mission and vision in mind. So deeply appreciative of Derek spending some time with us. With that, I will say again, thanks to Derek for joining us. And we are here every single week on Tuesday for a 10-minute conversation on all topics facing school leaders. And we look forward to seeing you next week right here on the Grow Schools channel. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.